It's right now. So, Sarah, we're recording.
Yes, yep.
Everyone except that's great. I was misled by an erroneous thought from the law. And I'm going to clear open this meeting after the design of the board and historic preservation commitment here in the board. 2026 meeting. We're opening the meeting at 7:03. I see some members of the public. Let me just start off by reminding you of the agenda. We're first going to talk about our main minutes, which is our usual order in business. And then our first item is a discussion leading to recommendation, but not formal application concerning a subdivision request from 191 Huguenot Street. That's our first order of business, and there'll be an opportunity for people to comment after we get started with that. Our second order of business is to hear from historic Huguenot Street on the proposed visitor center. Not for the first time, maybe not even for the last time. We will also invite comments from the public, but I've asked the applicants to give an overview, update, presentation of some 15 minutes or so, so that everybody in the room, including us, is absolutely clear on what the current state of the organization is. And then our next step, after hearing that, will be for the board to ask follow-up questions, particularly in response to that very, very helpful list of a summary of comments and actions that have taken place since the beginning of the year. That'll be our conversation, and then we'll open this to the public's comments. So with that in mind, fellow commissioners, is there any suggestion for amendments? Was it new connection? Oh, yes, I think I called that, so let me go touch everything.
I can review that,
Yeah.
sure. Okay.
So,
It was the name, something wrong with the
Yeah.
name.
So
Okay,
let's-
I'll double check. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Anything else? So, motion to approve the May 2026 meeting. Okay, and with that, small correction. So, great, thank you, sir. Jeff, would you like to come to the table? Oh, do you want to? Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Welcome. Not for the first time, maybe for the last time. Same answer. Sarah, would you be good enough to bring up the
Okay.
Sarah?
Yep.
Possible to shrink it. So
Yeah. So it looks like that's the smallest it'll let me shrink. Yep.
And we'll look at that. Actually,
Rotate it again.
so if you're not serious,
There we go. Okay.
I think is maybe, and then if you can scroll. That's probably the best view we can get. Jeff, would you like to walk us through what you're proposing? Hoping for?
Well, this application was just to open up the process of seeing if there's any possible development of this land. Yeah, I've developed a little bit in the past, and I know there can be like dead end roadblocks.
Right.
So that's why I haven't hired any professional yet. So that's really what I want to know first. Is there anything that shuts it down right away? This sketch plan that I did for the first zoning board meeting or planning board meeting was, I was just trying to show. This is what I thought would be the max. And that's where you start. Potential max.
Seems very pretty.
And there's actually, I did submit another plan to the portal. Where I took that house and the garages out. Planning board didn't want those in there, that would be like a separate.
Yes.
When my planning is done.
So, yeah, I mean, I suppose there's a presumption that that can happen, it's just not a necessity. They want to treat it as a subdivision. Yeah, yeah. That's really helpful. One of the things that I checked with the building department, just to make sure, because one of the things that we just stop it right away is if blind lots are not permitted, and they seem to be. That was confirmed by the pavement. So you can really step and talk about. I wanted to let you know, we have pretty specific directions from notes. I asked, when we received this, I wasn't sure if we were treating it as a historical preservation application. Or whether we were acting as an advisor to the council, and it's the latter. So just so everybody's clear, it says in making your comments, the HPC should consider the parcel's history and if there's any merit for it to remain as one. The reason must be compelling and based on historical records, not just an opinion of both more houses or a neighbor's concern. And he says explicitly, the HPC is simply operating as an advisor to the planning board regarding the position of parcel in the historical district. So we've got purview, but we have contact with them. So, right. Okay. Oh, let's respond. I mean, we have a fairly narrow set of instructions. I do think that in fairness, we should hear from his opinion as a part of the discussion. Sure. And we actually refer to all that.
So these dimensions, are these the minimum side yard and rear yard, front yard required setbacks? Is that these are,
They're not the minimum, they're,
but how do they meet the minimum?
yes.
Okay, I didn't check that, so just. That's basically, and I actually took the tax maps and I drew the subdivision on the larger tax map just to kind of take a look at the proposed subdivision in the context of the street, the other lots. So whenever you guys want to take a look at that, I think it's helpful to look at it. I didn't really have further questions, so.
Yeah, I can help you get that. Maybe in the context of one of the letters that
Yeah.
came into the neighbor. Well,
Yes, that's on the revised map. Which I sent you before, yes, you got it. Didn't get it. Okay.
Okay, yeah, he confirmed that that's must have been what triggered his answer, because I asked about the possibility that there were driveways, it's legal in the village, obviously. It's a little more complicated with easements and everything. So is that kind of where you stand with, is the revised application where you kind of think with this? With respect?
No, I just did that because the planning board requested that I take the houses out and if I could do the common driveway.
Okay.
My current thinking is still is this by itself control. Our, my wife and I, our long-term plan, anybody can really have one, would be just one lot in the back. And the middle lot wouldn't be there. Now, one thing when I proposed this at the planning board, one of the planning board members said, well, is this gonna go any further? Because this was recently subdivided from the house next door. He goes, well, that's two, now got two more. you know, is this gonna keep going? Is this gonna end up being a major subdivision in every 5-year increments? So that's something that would have to be addressed somehow. If you took, say you just did the one lot in the back, you still theoretically. Because there is if you pointed out, there's a lot of land back there. You look at where the houses are, take away my drawing. And you see, my house and the Hasbrook's house, there's a lot of land back there. So I think that was a concern of his, that like, does this thing keep, okay, we can get on the driveway through here or something. But I think even from just a personal financial interest, the existing house and one lot in the back is best from, just a selfish financial interest for us. Not, I think the middle lot, if I was still an active builder and I wanted to have more lots to have more closings, then maybe, but I'm not anymore. So, the house we live in now is a big house. Our kids are still at home. They work from home. It's a bigger house than we wanted when we were looking. So, things worked out. Ideally, we would have a smaller house in the back. We would sell the existing house at some point.
That's really useful. Yes, I mean, the planning board, of course, has to be cautious because whatever you're thinking is now would.
Yeah, in 5 years, there could be whole new owners in 5 years.
Precisely, you could change your mind or new owners would have a completely different vision.
Yeah.
No, there's other things you want to do. Well, I mean, the planning board's asked for a recommendation, and I would like to hear from anybody in the public who'd like to comment, and I would also like to read into the record. An email we got today, which may have been copied through, I don't know.
I think one was.
They want to say what?
Yeah, I got that one.
I'd like to just sort of think about it for our record. Stephen, how much you?
I have the revised plan here, and I see the single driveway, and I think that is nothing. It's good. Two driveways right there, I would buy today, it's certainly fit it, but I'm more less.
I actually feel that was, is that shared position, one driveway?
Yeah, I guess I just think 2 lots would be better, so we're just given, such an important house, I just, and that house that's right next to it's already kind of right on top of it. It's, just in the interest of letting the house breathe and kind of, keeping it kind of stately. Kind of, street appearance from the street up. I feel like maybe 2 lots might be more appropriate, but that was kind of my initial thoughts.
I tend that way too. Just, and also, as you said, if you're not actively looking to monetize that, if someday you're right on smaller things in the back, maybe you'll do from your current house as opposed to being quite excited against that middle.
Yes, even if you walk out there and you walk sort of where the middle lot is, it just it doesn't add my real estate opinion or whatever that's worth. It doesn't add the bottom line. It's not really where single house farther in the back. There's really no subtraction from the main house, especially once streets are planted along. So you split it and then you.
And I think that it also, you don't have curbs or stuff like this, which the curb cut would be what it would be otherwise, and would address something that looked pretty tight to me. And, you know, Shane's metaphor of breathing room for your beautiful house. Seen it at several cities, and it's revival. Yeah, that's, so, you know, in terms of what we are directed to do from the planning board, you know, we are to consider the parcel's history, and I think that includes its aesthetics, and if there's any reaction for it to limit as a single lot. What I'm kind of feeling from colleagues is that maybe single driveway and single lot on the sides to be determined, but necessarily be found, but that might be preferable to two lots, which really is a kind of mistake. My read into the record this letter, Jeff, you've seen it because Jason copies it, but for the public, this afternoon I got a letter from Jason Taylor at 176 Huguenot Street, so that's about 3 to 4 doors from one end to one on the opposite side. He says, I really appreciate all the time, effort, and money that Jeff and Rihanna put into renovating the stones to such a high and tasteful standard, and want to give them tremendous credit for a project that has greatly enhanced the community character of the neighborhood. In addition, it seems perfectly fair for them to want to recoup some of that investment by subdividing the property to create additional homesteads. So that said, in my opinion is that a 2-lot subdivision is more appropriate than a 3-lot for most of the sketch and the see that we saw. The back of that parcel has the potential for a really stunning home site bordered on 2 sides by protected farmland and with potentially the best view of the ridge from anywhere in the village. I'm sure that a generously sized lot in that location could command a premium price. Reducing the size of that building lot to enable shoehorning an additional house between it and the stone house seems nonsensical. It would detract from the feel and presumably value of both of the other lots. It also seems that a 0.81 acre flag-shaped parcel requiring shared driveway is not well aligned with the community of the neighborhood. I believe that the last subdivision in the neighborhood is when Seafield Builders subdivided the property between the street and the rail trail in 1990. The new parcels created to the north of 161 Huguenot all have at least 100 feet of road frontage and at least 1.1 acres in size. The 3-lot sketch plan allows for only 50 feet of road frontage for the new lots, and would create the smallest new lot in the neighborhood since 188 and 190 were built in the late 60s. A 2-lot subdivision, in contrast, would align with the 100-foot road frontage precedent established previously. I hear 2 things about whether real appreciation for what we've done with the house and to the house, and I think we share that appreciation. And kind of the same thing we're hearing from this board, that one feels a lot more appropriate to the history of the house and the space that it benefit from. And Jason brings up things that frankly we haven't thought about, you know, the history of the subdivisions on that street and the size of those lots. Does anybody else from the commission want to have anything? I'd like to invite public comment.
That basically covers it.
Well, so you had contact with you.
Yeah, we were there and I talked to the town, I didn't realize there's a town historic commission as well. Yeah, so I talked to, yeah, so I live at 190 right across the street, and Jeff and I met and it was nice. So, and I totally think what they were doing is great, the house looks great. But obviously I'm right there in that little triangle. So my driveway, and I'm kind of confused about because what I got sent from Jason a long time ago was one driveway going into both. And I'm not really sure. I mean, I understand the flag idea, what it means. Did you say that flags flag properties are not allowed in the
They
village?
are, it was a question,
No.
they're not allowed in the town.
They're not allowed in the town, and we're in funny places, we have town water, but we don't have town sand.
no, you're-
So strange, so we're, anyway.
Just to be clear about that, so I raised the question, I just didn't know, and I looked in the village code and I just couldn't find anything, but Mike Baden has confirmed that a flag lot is permissible.
And- And you were saying, how many lots you actually, in that space, are you allowed only up to 3? Or you were saying you might in the future be able to do 5 or 7? I was a little lost on that, what Jeff said.
Sarah, could you,
Down,
Jeff, could you explain how that?
Well, when I went to the first sketch plan, the planning board, one of the board members looked at the map. So if you look at it, you see the 2 red houses.
Yeah.
He goes, there's a lot of land back there.
right,
So you're proposing these 2 lots. Well, is this gonna be another subdivision
so,
2 or 3 years down the road? Because there's so much land back there.
but that would be Tom deciding, because you can only,
His point was owners change.
oh,
You
okay,
know what I mean? Like as
Yeah,
things
sure.
change, the board, the village is always here, people come and go.
sure.
So you can have a common owner.
But could you actually, you can't, on a certain size, you can't put more than certain, I mean, you couldn't put 5, could you?
Well, it's half acre zoning and it's a big chunk of land. So people can work things out.
Yeah, right,
Like
like,
if it,
that would be a lousy precedent.
Yeah.
But,
so
so,
that was the concern of the board
right,
because they see this stuff all the
Yeah,
time.
no.
So there's a lot of land there in a half acre zoning. It's just gonna
Yeah.
keep going.
yeah, no,
Which is a legitimate question.
right, no, but I totally understand, because right now, it's a beautiful house, but you don't have a view of the ridge. I'm lucky enough to have this amazing view of the ridge, because it's, that land is protected, so I totally understand that corner lot. So, I mean, we still don't love the driveway idea, across, but that's, I know that you have to get in there, so, I mean, you could, if you, yeah, anyway, I'm going off on a deep. But then my other question for you guys, so what all you do is give suggestions to the planning board, you can't make rules.
That's why I asked, so we are charged with overseeing exterior changes
Right.
or additions on Huguenot Street.
Anything seen from the street.
Well, yeah, anything tangible, but a subdivision, this is exactly why I asked it, I
Right.
really didn't know last week
Right.
whether we were in a thumbs up or thumbs down position or making a recommendation to the board. It's the latter in this case, and it's absolutely clear in the village code.
Yeah. Do you have to do a whole historic, like you have to go dig in the back? I mean, I saw on one map, there was a old cemetery. Do you have to do all that research first?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think, basically my understanding is we're charged with protecting the historic integrity of 191. So, if we went really maximalist and put a house as close as possible to that house, that would be the question that we were asking.
And then one other question, I don't know if you know about maybe Carolina, about the 2 farms project and so there's that, what is that, from the driveway, would you then, if you were in that field, the big field, would all those trees be gone to put in your driveway? Or is there, I don't know which side of the line, it's a line of trees, it just becomes then a visual thing of how
The tree line is on the property. It's
that whole tree line is on your property.
more or less.
On your property.
Is
But
on the
there's a
property
50-foot
On the property line.
But there's a 50-foot, what's the setback?
Setback is 12.5 feet unless it's different.
But so my.
Or driveway.
Well, for a structure, I don't know about
Right, and so my only thing would be, I would hope that we might need some trees. I mean, I understand seeing the view, but it's that field is so special for us to have a postage stamp size lot. It's such a special view for us, and Jason as well, and Abby, who's right next door to us. So, you know, so those kind of things, those are suggestions. I would do, you know, just that wariness of, you know, and then setting precedents, right? Like you say, you may not live there in 5 years, and then the next guy comes in, that, you know, it's just, that's kind of where we stand, living across the street.
No, thank you, that's, no.
Can you just say your name again for the minute?
Oh, Nils, Nils, Kulseid, Kulleseid. And I live across in 190.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks. Jeff, if I were to, I snapped a couple of pictures of the site today. Would, are you able to orient yourself and just kind of comment on where the driveway or driveways might go with respect to the trees? And yes, you're welcome to come up and. Question, but we're trying to figure this out, you know, with. Let's see, so this, oh, sorry. I figured.
Yeah, they took the picture from my driveway.
Yes, I did. Well, I said it took us but this tree is right. I think that tree is at the corner of the entrance. So you go by that tree and then you come in, you want that, yes, so this driveway right here.
You're right. So the flag, it's a flag for your fucking right on that.
It's
Right by the fence there.
well, yeah, it's over, I think quite a bit more than this.
So, yeah.
It's still pretty wooded over here, and that's where the Grenadier came. Okay.
Right, that's why I wasn't sure what the. So maybe there is some forest still on the walk hill on the Munster Farms.
That might be just as helpful. Okay, yeah. My rough and ready sense is that the property line, pretty much the property line.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's an interesting issue, is that the view is really worth $1 million.
Yeah.
Or more. I understand that there's that, you know. So just, that would be my hope, is it just limited.
I made a note. Can I just show this? So this was several. So that's it's normally one of the things I. And match that closely, but it's, you know. But you get some even else to in not it's guesses, but you can kind of that scene which is loop problems. Let's see if I have a shot. It's that's actually probably that's a good shot. So the density is certainly, I think, if there would be a driveway, there's a chance that
I think the tree is. There's. It wouldn't be desirable, it's just the cost involved.
right.
It's very expensive to put in land. So it would be more on the edge of the tree line, you know. For the house side.
I was wondering if, in effect, that would mean sort of between those two or between those and the one.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
And you know,
You really have to kind of be out there and really think about it and see how things really end up. But it certainly wouldn't cut down like quality trees. With driving, there's plenty of room. Other roads.
and there are ways to kind of give some courage to drive it. That actually is some those things, but that's for the side. It looks to me like this, really not to disturb the church, please.
Power would have to come over. I don't know where. would come over on a pole, I assume, and then would go underground.
Yeah,
So it depends whatever Senator Hudson says would.
So, were there any other comments in the public on this? Please.
So I just wanted to say that
Do you mind if we get your name, just, please?
Barbara Neiman.
Okay, thank you.
So I live at the Village Arms, and behind me, I don't know the name of it, but there's Montague. There's a whole housing development. And when that housing development went in, I don't know that much about, I'm new to the planning board and how things work here. Although I was in real estate for a while, but what happened is that someone, I think it's Scheffler, the people from Zero Place, he was able to put in 3 or 4 or 5 gigantic units that are 2 families in each. And that made such an impact on our experience living where we live. I'm sure the people in Montague are not too happy about that either. And I feel that people have to really look at not just their own properties, and I feel badly because that is his property and he wants to have a second house. I don't see a problem with that. But I do feel like as a town that we need to be a little bit more discriminating about where we would allow a subdivision and not allowing in the future for 5 houses to go in there. Because I feel like with this historic Huguenot that we're going to be talking about in a few minutes, more and more people are enjoying the Huguenot Street, and they have for years and years. I've walked there for the 25 years that I lived in New Paltz here, have lived in here. And I think it's important to try to have respect. And I think that's what you're doing. You're looking at what makes sense and what doesn't, and not just allowing a whole throwing in anywhere, anything, just because people want it. But respecting his need to have a second house, that sounds good. But I think to protect this from becoming applied housing division in the middle of an area that is becoming, it's very public. And the more Huguenot Street does what they do in terms of the center, Huguenot Street will be more public than ever. And people wanting to visit there and wanting to use the green space. And I just feel like we need to look, and the town and the village will be one. How much, it's 1 point. So I think we have to look at the whole picture.
Barbara, thank you. Yes. Thank you. Any other comments from the public, please? And again, if you don't mind stating your name.
Sure, my name is Abby Green and I'm a neighbor to Nils on the other side. So I think the concern for many of us is not just the tree line and the potential driveway and all of that, but again, the view and what we're going to see, and to follow up on what Barbara just said too, just the character of the neighborhood. So for instance, I remember many moons ago, Heidi Jewett had planted a few fruit trees in her yard, and she had to take them down because eventually they'd grow up and obstruct the view to the public of the ridge. And part of preserving that land was to give the public an opportunity to have that view. So I think we all take views pretty seriously. It's part of our environment and part of what we see. I don't know enough about this plan to know if the actual houses, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or eventually 5, are homes that will be seen from the street. But I think that's a real issue, because when we talk about the whole reason why we wanted to preserve the character of the beautiful home, and Jeff and Rihanna did a beautiful job, keeping it looking so beautiful. But part of why that's so wonderful is because it's preserving the character of the history of the street and the beauty of the natural environment. So I hope that we all consider that moving forward.
Thank you. Just for my own notes, ABBY?
EY,
EY.
but pretty close.
Thank you. And how about E at the end of the green?
No E,
Okay.
the E is an Abbey.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And is it 188?
It's 188, yes.
Great. One of the things this nails is partly answer your question about what our purview is. Should there be a proposal to build a house on some eventual subdivided lot? Then we have up and down power because it's a built structure.
I see.
And you can be assured, at least by this board, I can't predict what might happen in 10 to 20 years, but we would be very cautious about what would go on.
Yeah, so my house would be gone. You guys put around. It's not very pretty.
I'll step away from that. That's beautiful view. And I suspect it's highly functional.
It's highly functional.
But Abby, thank you for that comment. I've taken the notes. Are there other comments from the public, please?
My name is Kara Lee, and I live on Lincoln Street too. And I've been there for 35 years and worked pretty hard to get the conservation easements in place on the Jewett Farm and what's now called Huguenot Street Farm, which join behind the house we're talking about. And I echo what everyone says about how grateful we are that the house has been restored, but also echo what other people are saying about the importance of the view shed for so many people. Living on Huguenot Street, you become aware that it is a public space that a lot of people use. And the effort to protect that view shed by purchasing all that farmland should be taken into consideration. And I'm sure the board is familiar with the report prepared by Neil Larson about historic farmsteads in our community. And I suspect this is one of those historic farmsteads, which might be interesting to look at in terms of its use in the past and its role. So I appreciate that people are considering it carefully, including the owner, and that I'm really just echoing what other people have said about the value of the open space there and the character of that part of the industry.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the community? So Jeff, our job is to make a recommendation to the planning board. I think everybody's on the same page about the importance of view shed and preserving what's beautiful about Huguenot Street. Do you happen to know what the distance, the line that Shane produced there to the far left, the distance is from Huguenot Street to the end? Or what?
It's on the other map.
It is, okay. That looks. If you can go down just a little bit.
Talk about the whole property.
Yeah, no, if we could establish what that distance is, I think. 288, I think I'm seeing
I
that.
think it's
That's 2 points.
I think
Well,
then plus another 367.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Okay,
I want to say that middle line was like 450 or something. That's big.
okay. So,
It's back there.
I think something that the public, people have commented have mentioned, how visible might a house be, that I guess strictly speaking, doesn't guide our discussion tonight, but I think there's good faith all around. It's a pretty good setback from the street, and so I'm optimistic that a house that's vetted by this commission placed somewhere toward the rear of, I guess I'm sort of working in some one lot, two lots, doesn't seem to me to present the view shed problem. If roughly, Sarah, would you go to shrink that? Yeah, just a little. If a house were to land, it's just saying a slightly larger lot, about where the garage and house is currently sited. That's a
Yeah. Even now, it would be blocked I don't know, 100% blocked, but would be substantially blocked by existing trees in the middle. Um, there's two other houses on Huguenot Street. I don't know the number, but I think they're right next to big farmhouse. And they go back and it's split.
Yes.
There's houses back there. You can, if you don't know the look, you would never see those houses back there. That's ultimately what would be sort of the goal, building back there. There's something back there, but there's another house at the end of the street, or the driveway. I think it's for sale now. It's like you can't even see that house.
Yeah.
Leave it out.
That's a good point, actually. So when I looked at the tax map, just to overlay your subdivision, I didn't realize that there was the two flag lots basically in between that farm and your house.
Yeah.
That was a surprise to me.
I remember.
And those would be closer to the street than what, you know, than most.
Probably maybe a little bit. They're pretty far back there.
Yeah. But,
I remember being on Huguenot Street like 30 years ago. And that water tower was like, it was the first time I'd been on that street. And I said, oh my God, there's a water tower right in that backyard. And I didn't know whether it was old, if it was still used or what. Now you don't even see it anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. So to bring this to some kind of conclusion, colleagues, if we were to make our recommendation, planning board along these lines, that we are more comfortable with a single lot and a single driveway, that protection of trees is and would be a priority, and citing a single, assuming a single subdivided lot, that a house set substantially back into that lot doesn't appear to us to have any effect on the historic nature of the place. Is that
would be best.
did everybody's sense of things? Just
I would say gravel. And
yeah, that's a very good point. Yes. Yeah, I think that, the planning board really doesn't want us assuming the house, although obviously one has to. But you're right, the gravel driveway would be much more therapeutic. Curved driveway next, so.
yeah, our surface gravel.
Yeah.
And it's such well-drained soil that it's not an issue. There's grass growing in it, but it's just.
This sounds good. If everybody agrees, then that would be the nature of the recommendation. Jeff, I would make sure we get a copy of each other's email. Should be able to do that within the week. I don't know, are you scheduled to meet before the planning board?
I don't think it's public hearing scheduled yet. I think they're waiting to hear back from the other agencies that they sent this out to. Once they have one, I think Mike said probably July sometime.
Okay, well, you will have it and they will have it well before.
So it's, as long as I'm here, in terms of the items we went over on the exterior, I have a few that I want to hold off on. I'll send it to you in an email detail, but there's a few I want to hold off on. One I know I want to cancel.
Okay,
So
do we want to get you on the agenda to talk about those in July? Bear in mind, we don't meet in August.
Right,
So,
okay.
yeah, we kind of July or September.
okay, I'll make up the list and then I'll send it to you and we'll just see.
We can discuss this. Some
Yeah.
of them may be immaterial and maybe further review. Sure, that sounds good.
Just so that we can sort of close that part out.
And but we open because it's not ongoing.
Yeah.
And it is beautiful. And everybody wants to say that.
Well, you gotta stop by.
That would be-
Well, it's not finished on the inside either, so.
Oh, well, that should be, that should, okay, so one of the ways to address that, I think, is to go back to lot sizes, right? We have some history, subdivision, and lot size that resolved. Right, well, half acres, very standard, but there's a kind of prevailing pattern.
Yeah.
Given us. So, thank you. Just see, good with that, it's like, it's lots. Yeah, thank you, this is, it's great. Thanks for the discussion, bearing with us, and you got here, I'll see you again. Thanks a lot. Thanks, members of the public who commented. We're now going to go to HPC 2507, which is a follow-up presentation by Historic Huguenot Street concerning the proposed visitor center. Thank you very much for again. To people who might have come in since the very beginning of the meeting, what I've asked the applicants to do is give us about a roughly 15-minute, not complete, but sort of summary of where the project is. And we will, having said, we have some questions for the applicants, and then after that, we'll be happy to open it up to the public again. So with that in mind, roughly 15 minutes, the floor is yours. I guess please assume that some people in the audience may never heard of this, most of us have, and some of us are at every stage.
Right,
Okay?
okay, I'm Lisa LaBrance, I'm the president and CEO of Historic Huguenot Street. And for those that came in late or didn't see me put them out, we did prepare a response to frequently asked questions that we've heard both here and at the planning board, trying to address so that not being redundant in the structure of the meetings can be a little frustrating for everything. So we do have a few updates that we feel are pretty exciting. And I'm going to focus on a couple of endorsements really for the project that we feel are pretty important. One being that we recently received a letter of support from the Ulster County Historical Society Board of Trustees, signed by their executive director. And I'd like to read just a couple of excerpts from that because I think it brings home some important points. The Ulster County Historical Society noted in their letter that as an organization dedicated to preserving our regional heritage, we have followed this project's development and believe it represents an important step toward ensuring the long-term sustainability of this national historic landmark. Our support stems from a professional understanding of a modern historical institution's dual responsibilities, stewardship of fragile architectural assets, and the preservation of the collections they house. For too long, HHS has been forced to utilize 18th century stone houses for modern museum functions, uses for which they were never intended. The historic structures on Huguenot Street are delicate artifacts in their own right. The letter also notes that we wish to note our appreciation for the project's approach to the Secretary of the Interior standards. It is a fundamental principle of historic preservation that new additions to a historic district should be compatible but differentiated. Whatever the final form of the approved design, this principle holds that new construction should ensure visitors are not confused about what is an original 18th century structure and what is a 21st century addition. This honest differentiation protects the site's historical legibility and prevents the creation of a false history. Finally, the Ulster County Historical Society takes confidence in the formal determination of no adverse impact issued by the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. That the state's preservation authority has reviewed and cleared the scope of this facility, carries significant weight in our assessment of the project's appropriateness for the site. Our support is grounded in that determination and in the functional need the facility addresses. And in another piece of to me, very exciting news is that we were notified about a week ago that we have received a very competitive grant award from the New York State Council of the Arts for $2 million for this project. There were 132 projects funded statewide. And I can tell you, there are at least 2,000 museums and historical societies statewide. So I don't really know the number of all arts organizations, but it's vast. There are many thousands, and they made 132 awards totaling $82 million, from which we will receive $2 million. And in the governor's press release, they noted, NYSCA's capital projects for arts and culture are strategic investments that empower organizations to better serve and engage their communities. They enable arts and cultural venues to become more physically accessible and sustainable, enhancing organizations' abilities to connect with their audiences and become essential destinations for residents and visitors alike. Strong projects combine excellence in design with informed decisions that will serve and strengthen New York's arts and cultural sector, stimulate local economies, catalyze investment in our communities, and help to ensure the vibrancy of our cultural organizations. So that was pretty well used on our part. And I just want to reiterate the size of the grant demonstrates the support of New York State behind this project. And now Jason will bring some.
One of the things I think we were asked to do is also show what we previously had submitted and to what we currently have now. But what I'm showing here on the screen, and pretty much everything I'm going to show is everything that we've already seen. So nothing has changed. So just more for the members of the audience. So there was quite a bit of reduction that was done from our initial submission that was made up here to this one. And it had to do with primarily the reduction of previous increase services. So we had a reduction in paid parking. So you see the paid parking in this location. Originally, we had 71 spaces. Now we show 28 spaces. We've got grass pavers along Broadhead. Now there's 20 grass pavers. And then we have some overflow parking. It's just grass. So it's just lawn and larger events that are held there. And so that we've got 37 grass areas for overflow. So we call that stabilized grass. So essentially the overall parking capacity, we took the overall number brought it down to 17%, but then we also brought the paved parking down by 53.4%. So that was one of the big things. The other thing that we did, which I'm going to share with the last slide, again, we've seen this. So this slide I presented previously, essentially what was in blue is what originally presented, what's in green is what colored. And so the whole point of this is really to show where we removed the parking, how we shrunk the building with patio and the outdoor education center, and the adjustments that we did on the broadband. So you can see here essentially what we did is on the outdoor spaces. So we reduced the outdoor learning center, which was here, by 35%. We reduced the exterior patio by 26.3%. We reduced the building height by almost 10 inches. And then we also shifted the building, which was a recommendation. So we shifted it closer to Broadhead. And so you can see that's again in this location. You can see the original corners are here. We shifted it further. And that reduced the healthy tree removal by 53%. So we went originally at 15 healthy trees, and now we're moving on to 7 healthy trees. Place minimum.
I understand that the shift of the buildings, so what preserve the road and if you look at the green, we only have 15, but it does deserve the different.
Yeah, so we talked about this much further from that application. The other things that those are the basic adjustments. I'd say one more. connecting access, so we've got one right back at the north frontage, running up our driveway, so that driveway was reduced to the minimum allowed for emergency vehicles, so like 20 feet now from that driveway. So the other more significant change is we've got one gate now at this location. We eliminated the gate up at Broadhead. So now we're just at the road location and goal of that is just for it to be the only gate for the people during operation hours was that's like on what or whatever can installation.
Very helpful.
So you want me to just?
Yeah, we want, there was a few misconceptions, I think, that were floating around, some comments.
And I think the response letter that we received went in detail with this, but we're trying for the record to really set certain things to be accurate as opposed to have different things floating around in the community. One is that the financial pressure of the building is going to require HHS to do weddings and other events. That there is no mortgage that's going to be on this building, to be clear and for the record. There will be no debt to carry on this. The building is energy efficient, so the expense will be pretty moderate on running the building. And the cultural facility use in the historic district is regulate event frequency, but this is not going to be a wedding factory. You know, we care about the land as much and the site as much as anybody does. And there is no financial pressure to the weddings to be around that. My mission is not changing. And the other interesting note about weddings is there's mostly community requests as well as descendant requests for weddings. So they're very personal to people. The other comment that we really are trying to take off the table is let's use another building like the historic DO house or other buildings that we have. We cannot use historic houses for the functions that this building has. And it will put too much strain on the houses. They're not equipped for it right now. We couldn't do accessible bathrooms. We couldn't do big meeting spaces. We couldn't do high technology things that we want to do to get our lectures out into the public domain. The next is that it's been cited a separate couple times that 147 units in Town and Country. That's not the number of units that would be affected by this. There are two or three entrances to Town and Country. Two, thank you. And am I right to say that there's no through?
We have a gate there so people don't do what we're trying to have them do, but that needs to be open for emergencies, for when they snow, et cetera, et cetera.
But for normal parking for the rest of the condos, it's separated kind of here at the front and the back.
Generally, yes. Oh,
Okay, but so the concept is that there's 147 units impacted. I don't think that's an accurate number when you kind of look at the number of people that are actually turning into that road. There's a lot of requests that we move the building closer or on Broadhead. And it's an interesting request because if we move it closer to Broadhead, we have a zoning violation. And we don't have any zoning violations as it is today. If we move the building closer to Broadhead, the parking gets redistributed to the center of the street, you know, where we have the building now. So what you're going to see when we walked in, when you go down the street, is more parking lots. And the other compelling argument is the archaeology has been done on this site we're building on. But, and we know that, we didn't have any findings there, but there is reason to believe there might be archaeology closer to, Broadhead, and since we haven't explored that area covered from an archaeological perspective, it would be problematic. And the archaeologist at Vassar, who was on our board, really felt he would be making a big mistake from an archaeological perspective to move the building. The other kind of misquote is the size of the building. We never proposed a 5,000 square foot building, ever. That was in some early discussions of getting pricing estimates, but it was never proposed. It was never proposed as a nearly 8,000 square foot building, which has been referenced by some public comments. It's not 4734. The square foot is approximately 7,400. And we just want some consistency and the facts on the building side without bending kind of interpretive things. By the public. The other thing that was discouraging, I guess, from our perspective, is that hearing that the community feels we haven't listened to any of their desires or needs or concerns. And I hope what Jason just went through, some more things tonight to talk about, that there has been a lot that's done to accommodate concerns that were raised by the community. It may not be what they would hope to have, but we're never going to get that's what everyone wants to have for this building. But we've done a significant amount to reduce, you know, the black top to preserve trees, preserve the public space. And the other thing is that there's only one corner of this footprint that is one small corner that is outside of the field. So everything that was not usable land for people to walk dogs and so on, that was just a grown-up field. And so, you know, parking scale, so park-like setting, we have really tried to preserve that, hearing how important it is to the community. And we still believe that the traffic study will be coming out soon, that North Front Street will help to reduce congestion, not add to problems, because if everything starts getting bottlenecked, that's going to be another potential concern. And we and the design field, the engineers feel that this is a way to make sure that doesn't happen. And again, traffic study, we don't know what's going to say that. So,
Do you have any estimate on wins? Students. Okay.
We're running accounts, so we're the big accounts.
the other thing that we just want to make clear is that public comments have proven that we can do anything we want, or the village can do anything it wants with regard to fire regulation. And it's our understanding that every fire code is governed by New York State. And those are the guidelines we use to develop the one-way road through the site versus a turnaround, which would be how many feet across?
So, yeah, so New York State has a 96-foot turn radius for a fire truck. That's one option, with K-10, which is 100, T-10, which is 120 feet, and K-10 is 120 feet, but slightly different. So once you get past 150 feet, the fire truck's not permitted to back up. So once you come in 150 feet, which brings you right back to the first handicap parking space, we now have 4 options to one of those three times. Or go up through. The driveway department was solving that. So just for think of this right here is that 96 foot. Circle, so just by way of understanding, so this is what's required. For a fire truck to turn. When it hits its furthest point, you're about 150 feet in either direction, and I go up the services and so basically what we would have is we would have something down here to their camera on or a pavement to them come up.
Or the other end of the road. But either way, it's a big chunk of blacktop.
We had that originally this week. As part of it, but it was more. So,
I think this is a small matter, but it's important to us that people seem to think that we just drop the bill in, and didn't do a lot of homework and research on finding the best spot of the board. And the same with the North Front Street entrance. Comments it would be nice to have, but you don't have to have it, but you have to have it if you want to reduce the blacktop and then that's the interruption on the site. And the other thing is that this is not something new or recent that we tried to do. This planning for the North Front Street entrance has been in the works since at least 2019. So this is not kind of something we're trying to test or anything. This is the plan that has been there since 2019. Proposing yes. I think that's it.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
May I have one brief point?
Sure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everything you're doing and that you're taking the time and spending the money to do all this. With 147 units at Town and Country Park where I live, Kathy Pitts. Just recently, we had an oil spill that went right off the bridge. Huguenot Street was shut, so all 147 units of our condo complex had to use that one entrance until that was figured out, which took a long time. So that needs to be recalled in your traffic study that there are occasions when that is not qualified in and out, including for emergency. When did that happen? I don't know what. The oil spill? You know what the oil spill was? Is this recent or something? Yes, 2 months at the most. So I'm sure that there are aware of these bursts and things. Oh, there's also flooding on the street.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is a great instance of people trying to be reasonable with each other.
Yes.
I think it's probably not accurate to say on a daily basis that 147 units exit, and equally you have to think about those emergency situations, flooding, oil spills, whatever it might be. And we'll be looking for that, or I guess the planning board will be looking for that in traffic study. Kathy, thank you, that's absolutely great. So colleagues, I think I actually wanted to say first of all how helpful I found this, and I suspect that's true for my colleagues. It seems to be very objective. I didn't see a slant for this when someone was critical of your process or design. It was represented accurately. My memo was represented accurately. So thank you for taking the time to do that. I think the next thing I'd love to do is invite my colleagues and myself to sort of engage with what you said.
I was gonna say there are 2 new things that we wanted to talk about maybe before we get to the dialogue.
yeah, so the two items you want to know about because we discussed more today. I don't know if this one.
Louder, please. We can't hear you back here. We'd like to hear you. Yeah, you need a microphone, guys.
Folks, what we need is a meeting here that meets this day. It's about a minute.
So one of the items is. One of the items is.
Yes.
So we would like to discuss that, show where we're proposing to do and when get your approval, some date. As the amendments and includes process. So that's number one. And then the other is showing the proposed.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Let us know when-
that's how we met. It was promised, but it wasn't there.
Yeah. So that's
Could I have a third thing, as we're thinking about the balloon study, at some point, the standard procedure for a certificate of appropriateness, which you can apply for. Should kick in, and that means, there's those big signs, public notice in the paper, and I think that there's probably some synergy. To thinking about the balloon study
that was our hope.
in relation to it.
And notice, notifying everybody when
They would be separate.
separate notifications, but.
You'd like to handle it at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine, and, I'm thinking just, our obligation is to those. In the news, effectively in the newspaper, your obligation is to write to your immediate neighbors, so clear that in that space, but also to post a reasonable number, and so we can talk about what's a reasonable number of things. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
You're lying.
You have a game design to show, so you might just get to that.
Might be that first.
Yeah, but
Okay. We also have the beginning, so. So this is now only one, so now it's Front Street. Such a both the budgeting level. So our proposal is to essentially use the same stone that we're proposing on the building. To sort of have these monumental. Piles on the other side. As well as a small sign that is on one side, and then basically it's still community type. So. So I suppose they'll show you, they have an old on it, but it's. Manual. And so essentially. Before they open, we have a fence and goes.
And the distance from the north front to the gate.
Yes, so it's about 50 feet, so it's allows for a bus and. Public buses. But it'll be open first.
Yeah, but it is provide more. Minimization of congestion of people trying to jam in there. This is just the open through that system.
Is there a locking mechanism hiding in that design?
They
So one of the things, if you go to the locked version, I mean, the last thing I think anybody wants to see is a giant padlock around the design. So right off the top, I would say, please think about a locking mechanism that maybe is not available from this angle. Well, thank you.
One of the things that is possible is to do it in the center with a pole that goes down and it's used for full gates on that. You can then block that. So it's a very simple, you don't see the mechanism that it's hidden.
They even have some values for.
Yeah, we're going to have to get wheels on that, it's just some 10-foot loops, so you're. This might be loose.
Yeah, sure, it'll be 12.
What is your reaction?
I like it. Personally, I think
It's like 28.
I know it was a long process to try to get something.
I like the gate design, I guess I'm skeptical. Yeah, those leaves are 10 feet long. structurally, if it's built like that, it just seems like it's gonna need to be
So,
more substantial to carry its own weight or something. You said it might need to be on casters.
yeah, so we would have casters at the bottom. We've done this, a similar design of this 26 feet wide. It's a big counterbalance inside of those red walls. So there's a heavy counterbalance in there, and then you extend a steering rod inside the lid. Usually you have to throw it away, and then you've got that sort of casters, and that's what keeps it from, or it keeps it so it continue to be operational. Right?
Yeah. This is a great overview and updates, and Marianne, thank you for highlighting some things that are definitely in my list. To talk about some of the misconceptions and some of the rumors and just.
And they seem to perpetuate, that's the challenge, you know, they start at the planning board and then they get sued, and we just have to figure out a way.
That was
No, that's. So some of the questions that I wanted to ask, and I guess I'll start with one that just came up as you were speaking. Marianne, you mentioned that a sighting on Broadhead, which a number of people have said would be more optimal, would trigger code violation, by which I think you mean.
Variance.
What exactly would that variance be? What would you
So-
have to ask for?
So two things from, and this is just because we've seen others, some sketches, both of them already into the applicant. A number of those sketches show the building right up there on the road. Right, so that's forgetting operation that doesn't work. That's number one. But second, we have a 50-foot setback there. So it's just found that we need no variances or fully zoning compliant with what we see here. We had a discussion with that because we had existing non-conforming with the parking in that area. And so now we maintain parking in that area, but we change it to pervious instead of so now it's gravel, which is in pervious, in grass lot is pervious. So that's number one. But even if the building is stepped outside of that, right? So let's say we kept it outside of that 50-foot buffer, against the building for the closer garden, but this location here. It still doesn't serve the purpose. So our purpose with this cultural education center is to support the museum, which is the street, and support the education. And so two things that this location does. One, not only when inside, whether you're inside or outside the building, you are exposed to that, you are seeing that without anything stopping you from this building to those historic structures. And it maintains the continuity of the street. Some of the designs that others have been floating out there is that the building gets closer, let's say it's even outside of 50 feet. Then the only spot for the parking is to the south where the building that we're going to show. So we still have something along the trail and to the south. Now we've taken the building and we detached it from its purpose, which is the property and the street, and that interconnection, because the goal is you are driving here in the park, you come into the visitor center, you have education outside inside, there's a museum inside, that's where everything starts. And so you're going to spend a half hour in there, and then you leave, and you're going to be seeing the entire street from that one. So it's part of the program. Right? So the siting of the building is part of the program, which I get it, others don't, they're not involved with it. There's discussions on what the program was, but that's why it's separate.
If that's something I'll just run through a couple of minutes. Is there any reason that the driveway leading up to the parking, so from north front, let's assume this design, is there any reason that can't be drived up to a certain point?
So we looked at that, it's no reason. So this is our emergency access line. It's really for plan. That's all.
That's sort of why I'm asking a question. I think the most consistent objection we've heard from the public is this ribbon of asphalt. I think the gates mollify that in a nice way, but those gates are better than what my imagination would come up with. But one of the things we've heard very, very consistently, and I actually don't know what my colleagues think of this, but you know, it's hitting, that is a lot of asphalt. Would it have a very different effect if it were gravel? I don't want to say maintenance be damned, but I'm going to say, you know, maintenance be damned. It's putting in a very large building. It's going to come with a certain amount of maintenance. I don't know if the public as a whole would feel a lot different about the design if that were gravel. I mean, there is the precedent in the church up there that is not asphalt. I put that out there. We don't have to decide that. You know, it seems to me that hanging on to that design continues to invite rejection from people who, in many other ways, like the So we'll put that out there. This might be my last question and my second question. You mentioned that you're going with New York State Fire Code, and that somebody somewhere mentioned that you'd like to do a lots of fire code. That seems weird to me. It's a public, but it's non-factual.
It's not actually.
Everybody in New York State is obliged to follow it.
That's the clarification. That's it. There's not much leeway.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think there would be, and I may even have say that. This is more complicated question. Another thing that we heard a lot of early on is the fear that it was going to become a wedding factory. I think that your presentation in these pages was really helpful in explaining sort of how we do weddings. What might look like a wedding to somebody who's actually in an educational program because it's just a lot of cars. As we move forward, I think the more we can clarify what's educational, what's public facing, and what's private events would be too.
We submitted something to the record.
It's absolutely, yeah, it was an appendix. Super helpful.
So that was
Super
a specific request.
But you know, the more the public knows that, the less you will hear about this concern.
And our church holds 60 people.
Yeah.
Is that Catholic?
And I think that, you know, I mean, I think there may be a concern out there that non-denominational weddings would happen in the visitor center, whose capacity is twice that. So again, I'm sort of echoing what's now months of comments and people grabbing me on the streets. And, but you know, I believe you when you say the intent is not to become a wedding venue in sort of commercial sense. But we've heard that a lot. In the recent meeting, somebody said, well, you know, of course, you're a nonprofit, you're going to reach for every revenue stream you can possibly have. We've got this big commercial kitchen. You know, of course, it's
not a.
No, I realize it's really advising.
That's not a big concern.
In fact, you addressed it, but that was the public comment. You know, it's huge commercial kitchen, and this is an organization that is a nonprofit, and all nonprofits. So, again, I'm just kind of alerting you to how much we've heard of that.
Excuse me, Tom, do you think we should put that as a handout as well, or?
I don't think it would hurt.
It is on the website too.
Yeah, people don't seem to be going to the website. That's the problem we're having. Is even with these little or frequently asked questions, I hope people do pick up things this evening, but it's how we thought presentations and a joint presentation between HPC and planning board and all the public venue and minutes from those meetings would get the word out, so to speak. So,
People in media studies will tell you, you have to use all media to get the word out. So I think there's very little cost and effort to maybe doing second, or I guess, second page of this. Because you must have heard this concern as well, that it's just gonna turn into a wedding venue.
That's why
What every single week is. And, you know, it's a busy place and it should be, because you have an educational, which there are a number of public community events, and I'm not sure people always distinguish those. Trying to see if, one other thing I wanted to, ask about, so one of the principal reasons that the site is what it is, or it's a principal reason, I don't think it's the principal reason, is the archaeological sensitivity or possible presumed site. Did that recommendation ever take the form of a written document?
So
Is it in the,
it's
it's in the portal?
yeah, so it's a couple of things. One, that was part of our submission, so some technology should probably getting numbers. So that's number one. Separately though, in analyzing all of that documentation, as I mentioned, she spoke at the last minute meeting. She was able to explain after reading all of the reports, saying everything that's there on this site. This is one of them, but this is the least archaeologically sensitive locations, and so that's based on the archaeology that was there and the studies that were done up in the region.
and we have the benefit that for years we had the archaeological field school that occurred across the site. And so we know how sensitive it is as a result of 20 years of investigations, wouldn't have heard otherwise. So in addition to the building site that was required as part of SHPO's review, we had that record and knew we couldn't go near, most of the 10 acres. Because there was another large building already disturbing this land. That we figured this was the furthest from any of the historic houses. It was previously disturbed land. And probably.
This became the fact.
Yeah, I'm not saying was that.
Well, because, the shame for all the things that are documented.
I know.
This is what we, but the numbers that,
That's
so this is the factor that was there. But the interesting part about this was since it's being torn down, so if they just bought it, so then tear it down, but
Thank you. That's, I think, everything that's been bubbling. Everything I, at least for now, want to respond to. We'll see about the.
So I think you made a pretty compelling case to not opening building on Blackhead. However, in terms of like the zoning restrictions, someone might say building is important. Why not just go for a variance? So just throwing out there, but you also had the comment about the operational requirements for the building and the Broadhead location not being able to accommodate that, even outside of the archaeological study. But I think this is a really important point. So can you just elaborate on that and on the operational points of the building and why the Broadhead location, which, quite honestly, when that was brought up, to me, it seemed like a great idea. So just like I'm going to just explain it.
Why did it seem like a great idea?
Why? Because I think the one part of the Secretary of the Interior guidelines that I'm still hung up on is, in quote, the new construction should be appropriately scaled and located far enough away from the historic buildings to maintain their character of that in the site and setting. It's that for me. So even with the site plan, I understand that the building's been reduced. I still, you can't deny that it's still larger than the adjacent buildings. And I think given the language and the guidelines, I think it's just important that we negotiate that. So I think if you wouldn't mind just elaborating on why the operational requirements for the building would be satisfied on Broadhead, and then maybe after that we can talk about the mock-up, because I think that's really the only way forward to kind of to negotiate this for all us to kind of understand how big the building is in context. So this is two separate things, but first, if you want to mind talking about the operational requirements, why Broadhead doesn't satisfy that, and variance and archaeological requirements be damned, just for the point of this conversation.
Absolutely. So when it comes to putting the structure on the street, so in a village, right, we typically will do that because we're creating that village street. Right? That's not this historic street, this section of this historic street is, right? The village field is Union Street. Right? That is the historic nature, that is part of the experience that visitors have. So now we're going to create a cultural resource visitor center, an education center, that is to direct people's attention to Huguenot Street. It's not about the village street along Broadhead or creating a village feel as you come down Broadhead, because that would be so it's like we've got when you think of that street on Broadhead, that is not what the intent is. The intent is that this building, the program is for Huguenot Street and what that purpose is. So the picture, what would happen, or what will happen here in this proposed design, is you come from either direction, right? So whether it's like Front Street, Broadhead, you're parking furthest away from the historic structures on Huguenot Street. So you're parking up towards Broadhead, you're keeping all the asphalt, moving asphalt, that's it. The building itself now becomes part of the education. So if I step out of my car, a bus drops at the field, we come into the center. And if you go back to, if you look at the materials of the space, you come into the center, there are 3 separate locations of the museum piece. There is an interactive video display, given that center. And then as you work your way through, you come to a glass wall that goes out onto Huguenot Street from the opposite side. So the whole purpose of it is when the interpreters are there explaining, they're going to be able to look and see and explain. So you can see the wigwam, that's it. You can see the fort, you can see Bayonne House, you can see the Gene Hasbrook House, all from that location. So the goal is, and we've started to work with a curator on what's going to happen inside. The goal is to actually explain that you're looking at models and you're seeing what's inside artifacts. Now you start to point and say, these are where they live. Now let's go walk to those. Now you step out, you've already changed your mindset from when you go there. You're now in the mindset of where you're learning. You step out and you are on the historic site. The cars are behind you, everything is behind you, and now your entire approach stems from this location. You come out, and now you connect to the street and go the houses from there. And so that is the flow. Once you reverse that, and you say, I'm going to, just for the sake of, I want to maybe keep a streetscape along Broadhead, perhaps, or whatever the reason will be. You take Broadhead and you make that the important piece. You put the parking elsewhere on the site because we have to have it. We do have a grid. I'm struggling because I'm actually coming to reduce it. But we have it. So now you have to park that to the south in that long area. You have to park that even more along the right track, or you have to put it between the houses on Huguenot Street and the cultural. And that is the opposite of where you really want to go. Right, so you pull around, you go in, now you come back out to the parking lot and go through. Or maybe you take a little carriage trail around, but that's not the educational experience that this brings. So
I think that makes a lot of sense conceptually, and thank you for explaining it. The only thing, and this is why I think when we do the mock-up, the balloon study, or maybe it's not balloons, maybe it's OSHA orange tape, or that's we've done all of that too. Just to play devil's advocate, the only counter argument to that I'll say is, well, what about the experience walking down Huguenot Street or from any other point of the site looking back towards the building. And, you know, the scale of the building, you know, its proximity to the other houses, you know, that there's other experiences on the street besides the one you're trying to force inside the museum, which I understand. I think conceptually it's a strong concept. It's just in reality, with the, you know, with that structure now being where it is in the built environment, it's what about the other experiences on the street?
So we're actually excited about these.
Okay. So, okay.
Yes, so we're excited about that because preliminarily we have staked the corners, like you see that right now. You go out, you can see the corners of the building.
Okay.
It's a little hard to see.
Yeah, but so we've done that. We have taken a few shots of where the building is. It is exactly like what we're showing in our sections, shockingly small. And when you actually go out, which we're excited that everybody's going to go out and see this and we'll get to see exactly where we want to float this. You'll be able to see really the scale because there's two ways to get the footprint. Frankly, we are, and behind me and I are the designers, the design architects working on this, and we're struggling to get everything in that has to be installed. It needs to be big. And that is without a doubt, we're struggling with this. That being said, the only way to do that is to go up. You know, tighten it up and go up, or you go up, right? Like when we're trying to do that. There's inefficiencies with going up. When you see the building with at the footing of the building, you should be able to see really where the scale is, not only in relation to the other buildings, but also to the trees and everything else that's around. And we're actually excited.
No, I think everyone agrees.
And we would like to recommend as part of that, since we're part of the rooms. So this is what state that would be right now. So we selected 4 corners of the building that are staked. But then we also wanted to select the actual roof outline, so it's not just what the building is, but also the roof. Our proposal is that we will, for the building corners, float those as regulars and move the rooms for the other 3 corners, so that we can differentiate and have an understanding of that's what, because frankly, when you're out there talking about orange or something.
Yeah, sure. Is there any way to, I mean, this is a lot, maybe this is a crazy idea. Is there any way to mock up, even if it's like spray paint or something, just leave out a paved area?
Well, stay.
For the driveway.
We say that's like it's sound.
Okay.
And we do that just because of this.
In the states, where the gates,
Okay.
where the gates start,
No, I didn't see that. Oh, I'm all curious.
Yeah. I mean,
it's really tight against the round tree. Except at the very beginning, and then it curves around. To really snug right against.
and it curves away to stay away from the entrance to,
So it really, the curve you're referring to down here,
yes.
so there's a few reasons for that. This isn't showing all the stages, but the intent is that you're not looking straight at the back. And so we intentionally did that so that when as we landscape along this curve, now as you're looking up through that, it's when it's right out of the it's just taking place. The second thing is there's an easement, the sewer easement in this one. Sewer easement in this one.
So,
And then there is 2 trees which kind of preserve one here and one here, and so they're sneaking the trees.
it occurred to me that also that the benefit of not going straight up against the just across the exit. For
Yeah, we out there for up until now, traffic was also system traffic engineer at Stan Memos. Now we out to just to get feedback. It's a full 100%. So he's very students, they ran their accounts, so set up. That's the last of
Thank you. No, it's still really, I'm interested in seeing the study, so I can, thank you for.
You know, I would just echo if I could, you know, in a very abstract way of looking at this project, it does make sense to think about the streetscape of Broadway. But I do find this argument that that's ultimately not the scape that we're most interested in. You know, it's kind of disturbed with a large parking lot across the way.
I add something to that.
Yeah.
Because if you come from Huguenot Street down, or even from the rail trail the other direction, down Broadhead, it's these charming kind of early 20th century homes, right? Well, it's on the corner is, well, no, on the Huguenot Street corner.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Is
sorry.
The stone house. Then next to those are more contemporary homes. And then so you've got this tree-lined street with these modest homes. And then if you put this big building on that street, it truly interrupts with the feel of what's there. And if you want to get away from stationary types of buildings, it seems like you want to build on more of that community feel than the industrial feel. And the other thing is, children, we don't want children walking into Broadhead, which is what always happens now. They walk wherever the, you know, the walkways are, they walk down the middle of Broadhead. And it's, we just don't want our guests walking down Broadhead.
Could I slip in one other question? Is there any logic to flipping the paved parking along Broadhead, flipping the paved parking and the grass, it's the grass block? And I'm thinking just, yeah, what you just did.
I think we're thinking of that same streetscape I was describing.
So,
And then wasn't one of the public comments, they wanted us to preserve that, there's that strip of green. Yeah, the box between Broadhead and the parking lot. That was part of it. They wanted the parking shielded.
so what we did is we preserved these trees, you know, it's the sidewalk, you know, frozen down, but it goes back, that's for that reason. And then heavily landscaped that as well. Which the landscaping plan is simple. That's an interesting concept. So basically what you're asking is these parking spaces, and these parking spaces,
With foot.
just for foot.
And I see it both ways. I mean, on one hand, you're just sort of creating parking on Broadway. On the other hand, the effect of that would be to pull grain toward really the center of this project. It would be greener. I don't know, it's a general question. I don't know.
What if we moved it to, what if we moved it to all grass pavers?
So,
I'm just brainstorming.
yeah.
With you, yeah.
I heard of those.
This is an issue, and here we require because basically 20 spaces is all.
Of which 3 or 4 are in California. Okay.
So your 24 regular spaces. And that's it. When you think about the broad sense of it's very small.
And you said you were kind of unhappy to reduce number.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. It's frustrating because there will be many times that your parking lot would be empty.
And
And
that's
it's similarly frustrating that the parking lot of the church is empty. And one of the very first presentations, there was a comment from the church who said, I do wish that things could work out. I mean, that's the Little League manages to schedule, the thrift store manages to the church. I just wish that you guys could schedule a little bit with that.
Except our events are conflict a lot. Weddings, they have weddings, by the way,
Yeah.
on the weekends. They, you know, their services are on weekends, our larger events are on weekends, with the most parking. Our busiest tour times is the weekends as opposed to the weekdays, when that line does have to be empty. It really doesn't.
The big needs are concurrent. Is that the right word? Say it again. The big needs are concurrent.
Yeah,
So that they're, when they need max parking, it's also when we need max parking.
The answer is obvious if you have a sense of humor. You just see a multi story. Sorry.
Yeah.
parking garage.
That was a joke from the very.
But to your point,
Yes.
so that is why we try to balance it, right? So we've got 20, and another 20, which are, yeah, so that's 40. That will handle all of the regular event day-to-day spaces and the few real bigger events, which most of those are painted with most people want to do. But those are just on grass. That's, and we pulled all of that away so that we take the trees down, separate with no around the property. And
Great thing is to also for people that is broader.
again, but that's what I say.
You have some places that decide that we don't go there. What's probably by we can simple that show all of the plans.
So that's what this one is, so we're excited because it will not appear that way. It's going to appear like it is in the sections of the show. So question.
Yeah, it will help to see the lesson.
So I'm sure I can help in this. Because wow, there's a print of 25 feet, which I think is I don't know, 25 to 40. I think that's high. In reality, when you look at the houses around, buildings around, that is not. And so it's going to be apparent when you see the factors.
And look at this one. We use the size of the building, but most of it is also people. And so maybe to people, it would seem that the building is actually the same size, it's just like the garden of the smaller. How would you reconcile?
Programmatically, we are really, it is really straight in there because of, and we know this from the master site plan, how much space was allocated for programs that functions that need to get out of the historic houses and into this facility. And it's probably not as good as it needs to be, right?
So
That's
that's
over 77.
That's all done. So that 7,400 square feet, we are struggling to get the uses in there. In fact, we're making concessions to the sellers because we want it to be bigger. There's actually different uses. And if you really read the reports, it was brought up about 5,000 square feet. That was a line for cost analysis. But if you really went through that report, that tallied up at 3,000 square feet. You know, all of the different pieces that were associated with that. That was sort of small and we bought it under that, but not without paying because it's. That's also why we have to. So that was how we do it. Is to say, okay, probably we don't have the building the size that we want. We can have the ability to have outgoings for sure. And that's what then led us to that outgoing structure that sort of sets down plus the patio. That was our way one transition, but also to take some of the uses that could be done in the nice weather and quickly.
One of the goals of Webster County is to get people to walk with the rail trail into the villages. And I think this is going to be a very attractive place for people to come off the rail trail and enjoy the blue front patio. Get new
handicap accessible restrooms, they get water, and for the community to enjoy. I think it's really gonna be, aside from the picnic area, I think having the space to look out on what was a village, and now see a village with the Native American influence and the other aspects that came in, I think is another place for people in the village residents to love. But I think, as everyone's saying, that the balloon study will help a lot, in kind of showing the elevation.
I guess, just recognize. Let's say the cover price will be lower, in case people are still, thinking that it's good. What's the reason for it to be? Is it just to increase the space, providing the station?
This is a, so if you look at this section, this is side elevation, so you sort of see, this is, right, so our building is sort of, this right up, so it's the building is not, it's the building. So this pitch here, it's not quite the minimal here, but it's very close, it's 1.5 bricks, 1.5 1 so we're proposing a standing seam roof, that's it, right, that will single shutter, so that is just the continuation. So after the last time, we looked at what we could do. So we adjusted the pitch to the shutter, and 2 on 12, we dropped it down slightly, we only brought it down, we were at exactly 26 feet, so brought it down roughly 9 inches. And that's, but again, I think you're doing certain things.
Well, let's talk about the review study. So maybe we start with our requirements for public notification. Basically, we want to get that started quickly because you don't.
We can do it this week.
Basically, yeah, the signs would have, if we're intending to continue this conversation on July 13th, I think it's the date. So 11th,
I think it's the 13th. Yeah, 13th.
You know, at this point, there hasn't been a formal legal invitation from the public to come to house and we've taken public comments since December.
We have a public comment meeting. Way
September.
February.
Well, September was the hearing.
Yeah, that's right. We did. And, yeah, so I keep saying the public has to be open. It's been open this whole time. But that was never noticed legally.
It was noticed, however, I don't believe that during the meeting, during the so listen to that, just after everyone during the public hearing.
We'll look into that. You know, remember the doing the sign.
Yeah, they did. September was their public
Yeah.
hearing. Yes. Yeah.
Don't. Okay. But that's what we do. It's a technicality, you know, the object of the whole thing is to make sure the public knows the defense. Yeah.
If I may, the balloon study, so we follow the PDC guidelines when it comes to doing visualization studies and engineering studies. So there are a couple of parameters that we have to do. So regularly, we request of the bill 2 things. We need to set a date as to when that will be, so that we can put that in. The trouble is if it rains or if a significant rain, and if it's more than 9 hour rains, we have to have an alternate date. So a notice will have to have the date that we're proposing, plus an alternate date for the event that we can't hold. Otherwise, there is so 8 miles an hour is what we have to look for. In anticipation of this, we've already stated as you've seen, so that we know we got everything, so it shouldn't matter selecting going through the appropriate time for us, and once we have that. If you recall, the package, we've done a visualization study already, and that's where we've already modeled the site, we've modeled the building. We had 11 different points around the property where we took images, different lines. We superimpose those, the trees that were to remain, so what we do is we will take images from those exact locations, there's GPS coordinates in that package. We'll take the images from those exact locations so that you can compare. Okay, this is what the rendering showed, and this is where the building showed. That way we can have, so we'll be doing all of that, and forms will be open for 24 hours. After 24 hours, the building starts to drop, and we're going to secondary, not really, but people saying we're not a big. So it's not the 4 foot balloons. There's a on that site. We're proposing red and blue. That's what we keep in stock in our office. So the 4 foot balloons, the top of the balloon will be the top at that height. If you look at the bottom, it's actually the string has measurements on it. And the stake, there will be the existing way, proposed way, and the height. So that would be right on stake. And you'll be able to see and figure out that what is floated there is actually so we take all that. So it's a process which people go with.
And this is covered by the DEC.
DEC has the item on it, so the guidelines. So we follow that.
In the spirit of honest project interest and transparency, is there anything prohibited in this announcement saying that such and such are representatives from the applicants and indoor would be on site to expand these things? Is that a good idea or bad idea?
So generally these are done where that's the property which wants to get it. So they're looking at from this from the house, from the street, from another street. But in that same time, we have done where we walk through the whole watch through and see it's broken there, but that's that didn't have something.
So you might just want to think about that. Again,
I'm not sure I understand.
So having someone from our team.
Out there that show us, I mean, like
What they're saying.
what they're seeing. So Marianne, within that 24 hours, could there be a 1 hour or 2 hour window where people would be maybe not even make a presentation, but to be on hand to answer questions? Because people won't necessarily know what the elevation marks mean. They're going to take a glance and see red balloons, blue balloons.
It's done in 24 hours, right? It's daylight.
We leave it up the 24, generally what most municipalities do is their consulting engineer goes out and confirms. That was isn't that to expires. But I would recommend that we do it before the July 4th weekend, just because otherwise we'll be on. So we get it shorter than that.
Has any part of this discussion happened with funding board?
So it was brought up that this would be happening.
Okay, but no.
We didn't request,
That was a special. But
but we thought we would have. Still want it would be.
So, the July 4th weekend is the Fridays, the 3rd is a Friday, Saturdays, or our meeting is the 13th. June. What's, I mean, I think we don't want to get close to the 30th because people will, I mean, potentially when that.
So if I can make a recommendation, I'll be this 24th. Monday to the 26th of each way. It's just a little tiny. And as I said, I don't have to back is.
And the same weather system. I was gonna ask in your experience, it is better than.
Just how that it is, but not too far because there's a lot of comments that I can make this time get that way.
And if we notify people in the public hearing at the same time, when we have to have it be posted and delivered. Your public hearings on the 15th of July.
Yeah, we need about a week, even sometimes a little more, particularly with that holiday in the day. We need to, we must have a notice in paper. I think it's minimum 5 days, so.
Yeah, I think it's 10 days, but I can work on getting the signs and stuff to them this week. Yeah.
I think there's probably, there's a, we can get on this pretty quickly.
Mhm.
We could also do the 26th and 29th, it's Friday, Monday, but.
If we sent the notices out. The notice for the, well, when would we have to send out the notices for the rooms?
So 10 days prior to. So so let's say if it's that Friday, the 26th, then it'd be the 15th, which is next one from today.
So it's the 26th and 20th, you'll stay for just.
But that's,
Yeah. Alex, look at. I think maybe 26 putting in bills, like it just gives us a little more breathing. It's very.
This is being studied in this,
The billing days, so Friday is the day, Friday the 26th is the projected day, Monday the 29th is the rain.
that's a Sunday, right?
Remember.
Oh, June.
Yeah, we want to say.
It's 10 days after this, right?
I think it is 10.
I want to say I'm pretty sure it's 10 days.
So we really got until like the 15th for getting the ad and those things, right?
Yeah, that would make sense if we're looking at the 26th. Yeah, so we'd have about a week or so to get things together.
And at the same time, we do this for the public hearing. 13.
Yes, I just feel like getting one notice out with references to things.
Yes, we're being more separate for some reason, I think. The council advises can be 2 separate communications.
Okay.
But they literally.
Same one.
They have 2 separate envelopes.
Absolutely. In fact, I think that is the practice, right? If you have a planning board and a ZBA hearing, those should be something. Okay. That's very good. And then we can talk in the next couple of days whether it's advisable to promise somebody on site to be there to kind of explain. It seems to me not a bad thing.
Someone from Ireland's.
That would just kind of choose. I would be available because I'm really not the one to explain it.
And I will, it's the board of patients, so that's how. So it comes to capture the truth. If, then the point to the body just seems.
Another grant from software that they do the chicken test and field. Somebody's been here.
Yeah, no, we're at that point.
I'll stipulate that they're probably more.
That's the benefit of those loans. Because they get come out of this consistent people.
Somebody has to get in there. No, that sounds good.
We should also do maybe the southern outside corner of the building, the southeast. No, the one, yeah, let's move it pretty down.
Maybe sort of logically want to do the little.
It just seems like without that, the building kind of backs.
Okay, sure. Does that seem just a suggestion?
Any reason not to?
So
We were looking for the state,
yes,
we were just talking about. Sometimes the trees that are there get in the way of these things. So
she was referring to something that's here, and so just on these, so the new heights couldn't measure at the room to the ground, right? Because that's not finished grade. And so we calculate existing grade, what the new grade will be, and what the height is, so that's where it's sort of come from.
Those proposed, orders, we could be interested.
One of them is this rate. That's fine. Well, we have one. So if we can't get the balloon to fly straight up, we have 4 foot by 4 foot flags, but flags that we go up and nothing to the tree. So that's what we got, we just hang on for the ankles, and it's having to do that if we can't get it. Sometimes the losses say it's the ship will be flooding to the same height because there's a potential. So that's really the guidelines.
Shane, how strongly do you feel about marking up that?
I don't know, I may just. Hard to quantify it, I don't know, it just seems like it would give you a better idea, like the east-west dimension of the building. But. It's an old.
It's the healing.
I was thinking, ask if maybe something on the ground could kind of explain, just like a table.
Definitely.
Something like that.
It's not each of them costs $100.
Really?
Look at that.
Each one. Plus the
Yeah, it's a lot of you.
we bring a big town, we fill it up. And when they're trying to, it's.
something got labor.
Okay, this is, I think maybe some signage with the site, with site that, with that, good sense.
It just helps on the stakes too.
Yeah, you can just see the states. So,
One of the things, before we open up to comments, one of the things I wanted to mention, it's as much for the record as anything. You know, when we look at the Secretary of Interior's guidelines, there's remarkably little about new construction. You know, this was a real surprise to me. And it sort of goes down to, you know, if you want to make notes, there's page 161 and 162, really all of it. One of the 7 categories clearly doesn't apply to us. And the remaining 6, you know, are not a blueprint for deciding some of these things. So, Mary had in comments, and actually several people mentioned this in funding, that balance between consistency and distinctiveness. There isn't a roadmap for what that looks like. Personally, I think we're there, like the design in the beginning. I think that's something that we will continue to talk about, but I just sort of wanted to get it into the record, but you know, as much as these guidelines, everybody's guidelines, they're pretty vague.
I think the members of the planning board who reference how many visitor centers and historic sites he's visited, and how all of them are incredibly modern and clearly distinguished from the site that they're interpreting. And the streets. And a lot is a good example. I mean, there's so many of them. So, you know, and SHPO's weighing in, where they do it on a regular basis, you know, I kind of defer.
Yeah.
the way that we describe it is we do a lot of historic renovations, and restorations, and on historic sites, and we got awards for connecting historic buildings to contemporary structures. And it's a delicate balance, but the way that I describe it is with renovation, but it's basically what those items are for the construction. It's differentiating it, but still. And that's my simple way of saying how we have designed to that on that surface.
It's interesting for additions, you actually get into the specifics of, how you connect the buildings. Right, so you don't have that general, yeah. So anyway, for the record. So we have dates for the Blair study. We have a plan for getting those announcements in a timely way. I think this is all good. Again, we appreciate all your time, thoughtfulness. I very much appreciate the summary document. Very good.
Just one other thing, we're planning for the next year, public hearing is to bring the physical insurance centers. And so we have a trail sheet that's listed in painted samples of production material and the actual stone. So we traveled to 4 different properties and seeing what was readily available within 50-mile radius. And we settled on 2 that we feel will work well. So we're going to bring those as well as everything. We can look back material list and see their different using different ways. We're going to have that same tendency to be very much.
There's a metal roof.
Any other level.
Like not see.
That's great. Colleagues, it's time to ask for comments. Other comments. So again, if you don't mind, please send it to your name. I took it down, but.
Oh, me? Okay. Yes, I'm Barbara Nicola. My main concern, I'm an occupational therapist, and so I deal with people's injuries my whole life. And I'm very, very concerned about North Front Street. I feel if this is not something that is equivalent to how New Paltz has always been, I've only been here for 26 years, but I feel like I know New Paltz pretty well. North Front Street runs from Main Street all the way down, and it becomes very complicated beyond 32. I drive on North Front Street every day, probably several times a day. And there are always cars barely passing each other. The road narrows at one point. You have people parking by the karate studio, opening up their car doors for children to get in and out. You have people coming out of the other side of the street. I have had to stop in the middle of the street and wait because large cars, now cars are getting bigger and bigger, we can't get 2 cars to pass each other. And the other day, I walked by on that area and there was a lovely father playing with his children in the area that you're going to make a road. And I just felt my heart just broke. I feel like New Paltz has always been about families and children. I'm not saying that we don't want a visitor center. I think that you all have worked extremely hard and I respect that. But I don't feel that the safety of our community and the sanctity of being able to live somewhere and feel like you're part of a community is being respected by making whatever material you're going to use to make a road that goes from North Front Street, an extremely busy street, where people sometimes think it's a 2-way street, where when there's a lot of traffic, Main Street gets involved. It can't even turn up there, let alone the other side of the road where people come around a very narrow entrance. So I really think that has to be thought through better. I particularly feel there is a real chance there's going to be some major accidents there. And that could involve families and children and bicyclists or skateboarders. There's all kinds of people on e-bikes. And this is the town that wants that. We built the Empire Trail so we can have bicyclists. So we could have this kind of community. And yet this is going to be, I feel, a real safety issue. That's how I feel about it. I wish that I didn't feel that way, but I think it's serious. And I wish that there was a way to restructure that. I am not in favor of building that road from North Front Street on. I do not think it's safe for our community.
Thank you, Ron. Yes, yeah.
Let's add a question, the traffic study that you have done, and we've done with us in mind, us fixing it somewhere. When will we be able to see that?
2 weeks.
Well,
Roughly to, it'll be posted.
So it'll be posted online?
Right.
And then, so is that before the meeting on the Thursday?
should be.
Yeah, okay.
2 weeks.
All right,
And just so we're clear, online is important.
yes,
And Kathy, you're familiar with,
yes, yes. The other piece of it was, give me a second, it's late. It's gone. Maybe it'll be back in 30 seconds.
well,
Yes,
I mean,
there's something directly related to what we were talking about tonight. Okay.
You know, if you think of it, you think, but.
yes.
Oh, no.
I mean, you can always email us if you've done it before. Yeah. Matt, please.
Thank you. Could I approach the board and
Yes.
point to the graphic, if that's okay? And first of all, I want to thank, fellow colleagues, Jason Anderson, all members of the board. It's an astonishing amount of work. Yeah, we should be congratulated. All done with great sincerity. The problem is, you've got it all wrong.
Stay the same.
Thank you. And the reason is quite simple. I think there's three critical things in approaching this site. Context, context, and context. I'm focused, I guess. Yeah, blow it back. Pull that a little, yeah, thanks. If you just take a triangle, draw a line down here, that entire amount of the center of Huguenot Street will be reconfigured and rebuilt and re-identified in a way that is not Huguenot Street. Huguenot Street is the reason you don't love it. It's modesty. It's that sweater. It's the pot roast. At the Bois. The voice. This is not that. This is what has plagued New Paltz for the 40 years plus before. Parking, building. You could, the brilliant intelligence on the micrometer of architectural analysis here. Every concern, every gut reaction you're having, there's an answer.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Well done. They're not answering the question. And I'll go through some of it. Green parking is still parking. It's still going to be filled with cars. Go and look at what happened at the DIA with interlocking paving. When the DIA did their expansion, they put all the interlocking paving there. Architects, much more rewarded and they wanted them to be both or Jason, put it all in, said the same arguments. 3 years later, they ripped it all out and paved it because it doesn't survive the freeze thaw cycles. So green parking, it's parking. Big parking. Big parking. Building in the middle of big parking. Look at ShopRite. I don't care how beautiful the building is. It's a building in the middle of parking. Go find it here, Huguenot Historic Street, find it here, find it anywhere but here. No, sorry. So you got all the right answers to the wrong question. It's gotta be modest. Go over and see what Francis Paulson did. If you haven't, over at the FDR library. It's stone, it's shingle. I know Francis, right, I get it, I'm speaking now.
Is there a time limit on public comments or?
No,
Well, you guys have been talking for 2 hours now. 2 hours. So
we're listening.
the other thing, you're talking about height. Moving up. It's not height. That's the issue. It's bulk. It's volume. This is 4 to 5x the volume of the biggest house nearby in terms of floor area. Okay, it's 4 tons. We're saying this is more than 2,000 square foot.
That's 30 stories.
Floor plan. Floor area. Footprint. Look at the footprint. That is what you're going to feel out there. No amount of balloons, no amount of dirigibles are going to be able, I couldn't visualize. Or you're going to visualize this. You want to build a 25-foot wall of glass, maybe you could visualize that from the corner of Deo to the almost, to the barn here will be a solid wall of building. It's volume. And that's the concern. There's arguments about, well, this is a sensitive archaeological area, that's why we can't put the building there. Just take the building, rotate it, put it there, put the parking over here, put it there and there. And that's what we've been saying for the last 9 months. The resubmittal, I understand it's sincere. I understand it's heartfelt, but it's not significant. No connector, building here, parking here, here, and here. I've sketched it up before. You've ignored it for all the right reasons, for all the reasons.
We do not own the parking across the street.
You own this building.
We
Correct?
don't own the parking.
You own Dio. You own this building.
Your sketch showed parking that we don't.
You own this building and this property. You don't own that. You don't think, and as the community has said, really? The church can't have an access here and you can figure out a way? You figured out so many other things that are so much harder answering the wrong question than figuring out a right of way across there so that you could utilize this. So I understand everyone, the train has left the station. SHPO is waiting. The money's in the bank. Ulster County Historical Society is in there. All of this effort is not answering the key question. There was passion talk tonight about the view shed just down the street. How about the open space? It's the de facto park. And it's the context of these buildings. This will irrevocably change. That's what's not being answered. All of this other effort. Don't do the building. And don't do the balloon. Don't just stop. You want to know something? Build a detailed basswood model. Because even the renderings don't. Even for architects, they're like, oh man, that's a great rendering. Build a model so you can walk around and look at it.
That's what exactly. Question.
I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about my son? Why does that happen?
That's the very same thing.
Oh, that's right. Son and father don't talk. Yeah. So that's what I'd like to say. Stop the train. Get some other opinion. You know, there's one reason architects never come and do this, right? Ever. You've had 3, 4 architects in this community. If there was a legal problem in this community, I would hope the lawyers would step in. If there was a medical problem, I would hope the doctors would step up. The architects in this community have stepped up and said, hold on. And I hope the board will listen and just ask those alternatives. If you're still unable to get the answer to the 3 most important things, context, which has to be translated into site plan. I mean, I don't like the building. You don't need to make a modern building with metal roofs and timber columns. Big glass wall. Fine. Put the same building. But it's the site plan that is generating what could be, if you approve this, the worst mistake that's ever happened to New Paltz building and the environment of this historic community. The worst historic level. Thank you.
Please. Hi, my name is Judy Geron. I've lived on Huguenot Street for 26 years. I don't really want to get into this argument on competing architects, but I did for 2 times walk around this site, today and about a month ago when it was staked out. And the extremely striking thing about it is that it's so small. In a way, I think this picture does not do justice to what is the conception, because this whole building is lodged within a field which has 2 feet tall grass, so it's hard to see the stakes, but it doesn't even go into the picnic area. It is an unused land that is just a field that nobody uses, but situates you in a way that you will understand Huguenot Street and gets you out of the parking area and invites your guests into this treasured area where, as a resident of Huguenot Street, I have lived and benefited beyond words by what this organization has done for our community. And I don't know the details about the space and what they need, but I know that they are fitting in a gorgeous building, which is very low, in a space that is totally unused and is a field right now, crying out for something that is needed in the community and which would bring a message that when I came here 26 years ago, this sleepy organization vaguely kept up some buildings and talked about a history of 12 families coming here from, somewhere, the Palatinate, etc., and has turned it into an all-American story that every child in New York State should hear in a world-class facility that they are planning. And I think the endorsements that they have received from the state and from these organizations that speak to the quality of the building. And I think it will be interesting to see the balloon study, because it's hard to see the stakes in the grass, and I couldn't really see them today. But when I could a few weeks ago, the grass wasn't so tall in this totally unused area. It was very small. And I believe that this organization that I have seen brings so much to our community is doing something that will, sure, change is never welcome. Some change is welcome, like when they closed off the street and made it change from an industrial street into the beautiful walkway that it is now. And I trust the judgment of this organization to bring health to our community and bring other visitors to understand the country we live in, which God knows needs understanding.
Thank you. Yeah, that's-
I've been working with the committee, over the last year on this project. And, I just want to say, I disagree with what Matt has to say about inattention to context. Context has been everything in terms of looking at the siting of the project, the size, the building materials. And so I just ask that you, before you make any judgments for yourself, wait and come out and see how it looks when you see it staked and with the buildings up, because I think it will give you a really good understanding of the scale, the size, the visibility, so that you can judge for yourself. And that's really all I can say. I think it will impress you when you are able to see it for yourself.
I remember my other question. What I've read that is available at this point on the portal, it looks as if the main construction entrance will be on North Front Street. Is that true? I'd like to look and give me that. Maybe it's not. I hope it's not true.
I don't remember.
I don't think we even talked about it.
Okay, because that would be a huge concern. If that's where you fall on it. You saw something about the road surface needed to be a certain type at the entrance so that heavy duty trucks can get in and out of there to build the building.
So I think that's probably referring to the, sort of the point of probably the silicon concern with you're creating the roads anywhere where you're coming off onto a road, you put larger stones so that as vehicles leave during construction, the dirt and everything doesn't go onto the street. No, that needs to be.
So I misinterpreted that.
Yeah, that's.
Did you hear me? Again, yeah, these are still good. So, yeah, so will construction phase be addressed by the planning board, times and days of construction?
That is all addressed at the plan.
Okay, so, and that's coming up on the 13th, will the planning board be present at that meeting?
That's a great question. We can certainly, I mean, our meetings are public, but maybe an explicit communication is a good idea.
They also would be meeting, I think, on the 14th.
Will be on 14. Are you planning to be?
I think now that we have this.
Yeah, once we get the traffic, it's all, we're going back to the.
So are we to expect public comment and on the 13th and the 14th if there's two separate meetings?
Those are two very separate
Yeah.
meetings. So ours is on the 13th. And this is on the 14th.
So
It's probably also a good time to remind everybody, we're at the preservation.
Yeah.
Commission. There are a lot of things that the planning board deals with that we don't really. I mean, this is a very unusual project because of its scale and sensitivity. So there's been some overlap. We're looking at things that ordinarily we wouldn't be looking at, but I think that's in the spirit.
That's another place where there's a lot of public confusion.
About the two boards.
Yes. And what you're capable of doing and not doing, and what the planning board can do and not do. And that's.
Whatever you can do to help.
Would be great. And I explain what the different boards are, just so you can like,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Well, the number of times people have come in to talk about the town government at the
Yes.
village hall.
Yeah.
It's, Thank you all for your comments. They're
Thank you.
sincerely taken and might be carefully recorded. We'll be taking comments again at the next meeting on the 13th. Please do that. Colleagues, yes. Thank you. So, have we heard enough to have to move to schedule something for the third one. Yes, moved by Steve, seconded by Camilla, all these in favor, so 4-0, as you schedule public hearing, put the apparatus in notification and
We'll do the same thing, so, generally, motion.
let's for caution's sake, we asked for the balloon study. The balloon study has been offered, just a motion to accept a balloon study that will be scheduled for 26th of June with a rain date of 29th. Moved by Sharon, seconded by Cedar. Thank you for those reminders. So both of those are officially voted on, will be scheduled. Everyone, we always also invite written comments, and then we put between now and the public. You're on it. No, we talked with the presumption. So what I think, given the open-endedness of these conversations, I think as it makes sense to schedule potentially more discrete, shorter agenda items first. So it may be that we're not this won't be an agenda for either way to talk and apologize. I think hearing the other way, but I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you, man. Thanks. If you still don't need to have close the
Sarah, you'll get me this stuff, right?
Yes, I will. Yeah, so problem, it's noted. Yep.
Started talking for the meetings, one of the more. So that means there's what else to do, that's. It's not. It's not, they're expected to.
I mean, it is possible. Was it owned by the school? I thought that we would still. Sure, let's see.
It was all part of for a long time. But it was.
Well, I was thinking, I guess we should follow. Does anybody identify the school chapter, the agent? In writing, the agent is listed, and just so in the Bible is. Make sure your clients understand.
Yeah, Zillow was saying that's a lot of nice pictures. I've never seen anything, any shots of the interior. So it's not.
It's not very.
Some of it was dated, but. Other than that, a lot of things are. Alright.
Yeah. But the other was just, three blocks. Well, could you check the workshop?
I think it was like successful, just small ways, I must say. So, that is also to with the events and means only the or the entries, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I would just, yeah, Camilla, whenever you can get me those receipts so we can, you have them tonight? Oh, great. And then I can get that going with, yeah, great. Okay.
I will send you, I will send you those,
In the certificates, yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
I think also, Sarah, potential summer project would be to pull together all the art show data that we still have, all the lists of, and just sense of members, just get them into the tags. You may have that with somebody. But just, I know right in the file, so the result of this. This should be the 20%.
Okay.
One other thing,
Great.
that's, thank you, so much for your presentation, John, last Saturday with, local history. That was really, really cool. Get that out into the community.
But you put in, I think, thanks. Since we're thanking people, I just want to thank you officially for creating and curating just such a wonderful, and it's now a local institution. Yeah, well, I think the others too, they have to think that there are that many events or as well local artists or to see shows or one place and there shows and it's just good. I'm also happy to announce that we would Fairweather was accepted as an nominee. We have asked for a 4-year term, and that was me forgetting what alternates 2 terms. So he's on for 2 years now. Not 4. We had to miss tonight because we had commitment, but I hope in the future that we come to there were sort of changes, nothing to report there. There are quite a few more 250 transition events. The website is really good. It's just having a sit down there. It's one of the ones that I thought had particular historic preservation interest. It's coming up till the end of the month. By the former colony line now, is an expert on covered bridges. It's going to be talking about covered bridges. It's an alternate now. He's a complete expert on it. So, if you're
I thought you mentioned.
well, I maybe I'm not sure. If I do that. Yeah, it's late. I want to say it might even be Monday before.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I'm struggling to get off the line. Thank you.
We're in great shape for the budget. As you can see, there we do get a third one. Which is why I was saying that Sarah will have some capacity this summer to do some organizing of information. We should be praised for being so careful with that. June 23rd, the cybersecurity webinar, if you can get on that.
I also just wanted to add, because I forwarded it after I made the agenda, but June 17th, if you haven't done the harassment and workplace violence training, there's another opportunity on June 17th that I forwarded. Okay. Yeah.
Sarah, do you have to do this also?
Do I?
Do you have to do the harassment and sexually?
I do it through SUNY, yeah, but I usually do it just to make sure, but
You really don't have to.
I don't have to if I do it at
It's
SUNY.
supposed to be transferred.
Okay.
My job is to go with.
You should forward that, so that's important. Yeah.
What I told you?
You can forward to Sarah, who will
Yeah.
forward it to Nicole.
Nicole, yeah, Nicole. But you can forward, copy me, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to do it twice. Other business, I have 2 very quick reports. Nothing has happened on the church on Grove Street in terms of AC installation. I watch it every day, nothing yet. And the second is, we were consultants on the proposed hotel on the Main Street. And we haven't gone that way. It's down. Local parties. Yeah. Which is a champion. So anyway, I checked in with they had asked for some extension on their building numbers. But building. It's like this.
Because they're not gonna connect with the water from behind it. So I thought I could slip out the entire hotel, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, the marriage, but it's a bookkeeper, they call it bookkeeper. And whatever the parking ratio, it's in. Yeah.
Well, yes, I see.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a forlorn piece of property for a long time.
It's a nice design, you know, so.
Yeah, we had a way for them to say that was concerned. Is there anything else? Is there, well, this meeting?
That's the Cincinnati next.
Yeah, I was gonna say second half. Well, how about?
Just think, we can see.
Overall, middle side.
If you're going, that's a great. Service. I think over to last time, my wife, that's.
We allowed to do it, so.
Yeah. You should probably, obviously don't have this permission to do so. You still have the colors. Written down. Yes. And I think. No, I think I ended up with the little back home to. Yeah. It's like this. I think it was for me. Okay, we have the first. That's something lovely if you feel down the door. It's so, yes, that's. Yeah, that was. Motion picture.
So moved.
Except all this.
That was long.
That's the one we did, thank you. But I feel like.